It is day 5 in the Kristin smart murder trial, where Paul Flores and Ruben Flores are on trial in connection with the college freshman's disappearance. The state called the victim's sister, Lindsay Smart Stewart, to the stand yesterday. She testified about Kristin, her sister, telling the jury that what it was like growing up with her and the difficulty of not having her sister at major life events like her graduation. She said, quote, "Kristin was like a mini mother. She inspired me to do better and to continue to work hard. And that was a massive milestone when my sister wasn't there. That was really hard. That was a huge event, and she wasn't there," talking about her graduation. The state then called a woman by the name of Margarita Campos to the stand, and she was a friend of Smart's. She was with her the night that she disappeared. During her testimony, she said, quote, "It was a bummer memory. That was a memory I replayed in my head many times. I shouldn't have left her by herself, and she shouldn't have left me by myself. We should have stuck together." This decades-old case was reignited in part thanks to a local journalist who decided to dig into Smart's disappearance in a podcast called In Your Own Backyard. Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter sat down with the creator, Chris Lambert, for his thoughts on the case. Take a listen.
I started making a documentary about this missing girl from near my hometown like 4 years ago now, and at the time that I was doing that, it just felt like there hadn't been any public progress in the case for a long time. It felt like something that needed to be talked about, and at no point did I see it getting to anything happening in court. I didn't think that judicially that it would ever play out in this way. I just thought it's important that this story be documented in a way and that people start talking about her again, because it's likely that her body is buried somewhere near my hometown and nobody seems to be looking anymore.
People I've been kind of talking to, they still kind of hesitate because they fear there may not still be enough evidence here. Have you been hearing that or have thoughts on it?
I think everybody sort of differs in their feelings about that. I think everybody is hoping there's like a smoking gun, like they're waiting for like the courtroom TV moment, like they want that. This is a case that is largely circumstantial evidence, but it's unusual in that there's so much circumstantial evidence. I think the reason we got here today with the evidence that we do have, even though it's not definitive or forensic in nature, is that there's so much overwhelming circumstantial evidence that the small pieces of physical evidence we do have almost feel like they just sort of segue from one piece of circumstantial evidence to another. And so it's so clear, like you can see the outline of what's there, and it's frustrating that it's not more filled in, but I think they're hoping it's there enough that a jury can see it.
In your podcast, did you ever try to speak to Ruben or Paul or any? Have you had any communication with that side of the fence, I guess?
I did reach out. I went to Paul's house. I think you hear it in one of the later episodes. I left a business card at his doorstep. He didn't answer. But I had read a lot of news stories that were like, we went to approach them and they called the police on us, or we went to approach them and they took photos of us and taunted us and told us to leave. And so I knew that like I didn't have to put much effort into it. It's like, here's my business card if you want to get in touch, but beyond that, I'm not going to bother you because I know that you're just going to call the police on me. So I knew they didn't want to talk. They always have the opportunity to talk. They're very aware that I would be willing to listen. A lot of other people have offered them that opportunity as well. And so I did talk to members of their extended family, though, and it was interesting to me how many of them were willing to talk to me but didn't want them to know they were talking to me, which to me says, you know, we kind of know what's going on here, but we don't want them to know.
Sure. What do you think of the defense case so far? You heard their openings, you heard their cross-examinations. We kind of can pick up their themes of where they're going. What do you make of it? And I hear a lot of the Smart family that displeased with kind of putting Kristin on trial too.
Yeah, I think the defense's case is the same that the Flores defense has been all along, which is he went that way, she went that way, and just sticking with that. We don't know where she is. Where's the body? Where's the body? He went that way, she went that way, and they want to make the state prove their case, which is understandable, but their defense doesn't seem to hold a lot of weight under examination. The more that you have all these people testifying as to the type of behavior that they saw exhibited, Paul's interest in Kristin the night that she disappeared, Paul being the last one seen with her, as well as when you get into like the injuries he had later that weekend, the fact that he lied and then he admitted that he lied about those, it all starts to add up. And so with the defense, I feel like they're kind of resting on, well, prove it. It's where's the body then? And I think the prosecution stated pretty strongly in their opening, you cannot reward somebody for being good at hiding a body. We don't have her body, but we can't reward somebody for being good at that.
All right, part of Chanley's interview with Chris Lambert, who his podcast, and we've seen this with several cases, did reignite interest in the true crime community and also in the local community there on the Central Coast that never forgot about Kristin Smart. Still with us, criminal defense attorney Lauren Stuckert in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and that this case is a case that took place 26 years ago. There are some inherent issues with this case from the state's point of view. Time is a big part of it, and the defense at this point seems to be, hey, listen, where's the body? And this young woman was engaged in risky behavior on the night she disappeared. What's your take on what we've seen so far out of this trial?
Anytime you're dealing with a situation where you have an alleged offense that, occurred more than 20 plus years ago, and you're missing the forensic evidentiary side of that as it relates to proving the case, that's a hurdle for the state to overcome. If the prosecutors are persuasive in their arguments and in the story that they tell, they might be able to reach jurors and come back with a guilty verdict. But the defense is obviously going to be highly focused on the fact that we are missing this key forensic evidence that would be necessary to actually link Mr. Flores to the murder. The podcast coming into play, listening to his narrative, he obviously has an opinion about what occurred, and I should disclose I have not listened to his podcast, but that is not evidence, his opinion, and I would assume these jurors have certainly are not privy to the contents of that podcast either. So, it's going to boil down to who tells a better story, I think, in this particular case.
Yeah, obviously, if the juror, any potential juror that listened to the podcast, I think would have been bounced right away. In fact, there was a change of venue here. They went down to Monterey County up to Monterey County because the Central Coast was so familiar with Kristin Smart over the years, and it was there was a billboard on Highway 101 that is. Just was a fixture for years, and it was always in the consciousness of many residents there, so they moved the trial. Yesterday, another one of the witnesses that took the stand for this state was another friend of Kristin who was with her that night. Cheryl Manzer was with her that night, and she talked about what they did afterwards. She said, Tim was going to walk myself and Kristin home. Kristin, was very intoxicated, needed help standing. Speech was slurred. All three of us walked together. They started walking. Paul appeared sort of suddenly and said he was going to walk us to the dorms. The four of us continued walking a ways, and at some point I told Tim that we could continue on without him because I knew that Tim lived in another direction. And then on cross, the defense said, oh, so you felt it was safe for Paul to assist Kristin to her dorm room. And she responded, I asked if he would get her to her dorm room safely. I didn't think anything horrible was going to happen. It's just chilling to think about what that poor young lady has to, live with now. The fact that she let Kristin off with Paul Flores, if indeed he is guilty of this offense. But the cross, Lauren, was very direct in saying, hey, at the time, you weren't sending your friend to her death. You were sending her friend with Paul, and you didn't feel as though he was a threat. Point scored?
Definitely. I mean, the fact that this is someone who's very close to Kristin, and close enough that if she was concerned about this individual, she probably wouldn't have let her friend go off. So, we don't know if we're going to be hearing from, other individuals about certain behaviors that might, take this case in a different direction. But the fact that someone who was with her in those moments did not feel threatened for herself or for Kristin when she let them go off together, I would say that's a point for the defense in that moment.
We do expect to hear from 3 women that say they had interactions with the defendant when they were intoxicated and that he attempted inappropriate behavior, if you will. This was allowed in by the judge. As you could imagine, the defense was adamantly against that testimony coming in. We haven't seen it yet, but that type of character building against the defendant by the state, that was a pretty big ruling, was it not, by the judge to allow these other 3 women to tell a portion of their stories that said basically that this defendant was taking advantage of their situation when they were inebriated.
Certainly it's a big ruling. At the same time, those women are currently still alive to tell the tale of what occurred between them and Mr. Flores. So, you know, whether the jurors are going to think that the behavior in those situations indicates that, yes, this is someone who killed Miss Smart beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't know if it'll go to that level. We'll have to see how the testimony goes.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll be back in session momentarily out in California. A little bit of a late start today, actually. 1:30 Eastern time is their start time, 10:30 Pacific. Our team is in place, and we'll be updating you on what happens today in this fascinating case taking place in Monterey County.